Hey, it's Mark Edward Lewis from Cinema Sound here. I'm in Pro Tools and I'm going to be showing you a bit here from one of the Transmedia content deliveries that we've had to do for Blade of Honor. This is with our man, that's a great picture, James Kyson. And we're here, this is Pro Tools, but what I'm going to show you is going to be true for any digital audio workstation. I'm just going to show you how we've done this mix. And some of the elements that are here, the sound effects, there's no music in here at all. It's just ambiances and sound effects and dialogue treatment and all kinds of fun stuff. I just want to walk you through it here. So let's make this a little bigger. I'll play for you a little bit of this clip, which you can see on YouTube anyway, but here we go.
Lieutenant John O'Tekchik, CSS 8, personal log, encrypted Raven 0627. Go secure. So, we made love last interval, and it was the most incredible thing that I've ever experienced. I mean, our bodies were twisting and just turning together. And she's not some girl who just wants to have a baby, you know? I feel like I could trust her with myself. All of me. Yeah, there were no...
And then we're going to slide forward a little bit here to when we've got some Star Blades launching.
Yeah. Why would anyone want some other woman than a Mogulstress? But it's more than just that, you know? This connection that we have. This connection that she gives me. I mean, my heart burns in my chest. And I burned out 6 turfs in my last sortie. I killed people, but it doesn't matter. Because I'm still feeling it. Us. Our love. It just heals it all. You know, it burns in my chest like plasma. I mean, I feel it even greater than my connection with her. You know, it...
Now hear this. Now hear this.
With my Starblade, it's so real. But hey.
So cool. So you get the general gist. I'm going to make this smaller here so we can see more of the screen. It'll be small to you, but it'll be up here for your reference. So let's take a look at what we have in the wonderful world of channels. As you know from the Cinema Sound Pro Member Education, I love tracks. Love them. There's not that many tracks here. There's a few. They are not color-coded. We were running in a hurry, and it was kind of rough shot in the world of organization, but I think you'll still get it. So the first thing we have up here is the video track and what came out of Final Cut when we cut in it, the regular just dialogue stuff. Obviously, it's muted here. And then we've got some master bits here, then the dialogue track itself. Then we have some footsteps, which is really cool. So let's just start there. We're going to solo this track. Here's what the dialogue sounds like.
Lieutenant John O'Tekchik, CSS 8, personal log.
Now what we've done here is, let me get a better frame than that. He actually has no lav on. This is a pretty quiet room. And we were able to use a Rode NTG8 and pointed it right at his face off camera. Got a beautiful sound with all the Foley that was built in here. We wanted it to sound really natural, which of course is what a shotgun always gives you. I'm going to flip to the mix page. And this is a horizontal representation of what we were seeing here.
Personal log, encrypted.
There's the dialogue channel just here. Up here, you can see some plugins that we're using. We've got RX5 running in the background in real time, which is not really recommended. But if you've got a lot of clips and they all need to be denoised and you need to go really, really, really fast, but the noise isn't that bad, you can drop it in as a real-time plugin, and it works very well. Then we have Alloy 2, which we'll just show you here. It's running a multi-band expander, which we'll talk about in a second, and then just a straight EQ on his voice. Actually, we are running some multi-band dynamics and just a roll-off of the low end of his voice, and quite a bit of excitement from an exciter, adding some distortion. I didn't want this to sound nice and clean. I wanted it to feel like a vlog or a vlog, so it was supposed to sound a little bit crunchy. And that's what we've done here. Let's just listen to the dialogue for a second. And I'm going to give you the original, what we had. This is going to be a little bit quiet.
Personal log, encrypted Raven 0627. Go secure. So, we made love last interval.
And if you're careful in the background, you can hear the noise that's going on. Let's turn on Ozone 7, which is giving us our multi-band compressor and exciter and the low roll-off. It'll be quite a bit louder.
Personal log, encrypt to Raven 0627. Go secure. So, we made love.
You hear all that junk in the background. And it was enough junk where I knew that RX was not going to be able to take care of the majority of it, even if I'd gone back and done it in the standalone version, is what I mean to say. So we instantiated the multi-band expander. An expander is opposite of what a compressor does. When something goes below this threshold, it starts bringing it down. And we have 3 bands here for low frequencies, middle frequencies, and then the high frequencies that it's pulling down independently. So it's really seamless. I'm going to turn this off for a second and then turn it on. You can hear the difference.
Personal log, encrypt to Raven 0627. Go secure. So,
And off.
we made love last interval.
And on.
It was the most incredible.
It really makes a huge difference. It doesn't take care of all of it, but it takes care of enough of it where it's all of a sudden quite a bit more professional sounding. Now up here, we've got just dialogue denoise on an automatic setting. And if you know when it's running in real time, it's not running on its best algorithm, but it's doing a good job. Let's check it out with it off and then on again.
Personal log, encrypt to Raven 0627. Go secure.
And on.
So, we made love last interval. And
And off.
it was the most incredible thing that I've ever experienced. I mean, our bodies were twisting and just turning together.
It's just really, really beautiful. The combination of RX5 with an multi-band expander, in this case Alloy, which you can do with Neutron now, it's really, really awesome. So these two things, all of these put together, make for a really juicy, really crushingly loud dialogue. On the master output, I'm using max bass to roll off any of the low frequencies below, what am I at, 93 hertz, because I know it's never going to be heard on someone's laptop speaker or headphones, especially since we're delivering it solely on the internet. And then I'm running Ozone 7 maximizer, making things as crushingly loud, the whole output, as I possibly can, which is why the noise floor on his dialogue sounds so loud, because we're using multiple compression algorithms, the limiter, all kinds of other things. So it brings up that noise floor, and we want to bring it down. And I'm using those 2 stages to do it.
Personal log, encrypt to Raven 0627. Go secure.
And I'm not adding any high frequencies or anything. That's just kind of his voice. It's got really, really beautifully sounding on the NTG8. Let's see what else we got in here.
Personal log, encrypt to Raven 0627. Go secure. So,
We've got these little buzzes, these little downers. These are just, I'll tell you what, before we do that, I'll just go down track by track. Here's the footsteps. And we wanted to add all kinds of realism, the engine noise, air conditioning noise. You'll see we've got fluorescent light noise, and then people talking in the background, ship happenings, call outs from the 1MC, just a very rich amount of background noise and all kinds of things, so that it wasn't just him talking, which is so bleh. But you notice how clean we got his dialogue. I mean, dope clean. And now we add all the noise and it makes it much more real. Here's the footsteps. Just some, stock footsteps. Didn't need to be much. And they're kind of sporadically put through sporadic. Just some various shuffles and things. If we take a look at the actual track, here we are. I've got just a simple convolution reverb, a very small room, very wet, and then an EQ where I'm pretty much just rolling off the top and the bottom, so it's just the mid-range. Here's what it sounds like if we turn off the EQ. It's a beautiful footstep, but it has nothing to do with it sounds like somebody in his room with him. And then conversely, if we take off the reverb, so obviously none of that works, and you might not have noticed or chosen that footstep if you hadn't known that you could do this with it. And then, of course, pull the fader down far enough so it's not interrupting his dialogue. Cool. All right, what else have we got? Those are the footsteps. Then we have soft chimes for the 1MC that's being called out. and then various callouts.
Now hear this. Marine units passed away.
And these are actually donors who helped support the production, and for certain perks, they actually got to get their voices into the production. But let's take a look at this here. Here's the soft chime. There's a lot of junk in plugin land that we're using, and I talked about this when I was on stage at Adobe, talking about Adobe Audition at NAB 2017, that you can use a guitar amp modeler, and Adobe Audition has a really great one. This is from, I believe it's from Waves. Yeah, there it is, Waves. Here's what this, I'll tell you what, let's just deal with the voice, because it'll make a lot more sense. Here's the voice. Coming up here.
Now hear this.
Just about here.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units pass the word for Colonel Brian E. Neal to report to landing bay.
Right, sounds like coming out of a little speaker in a gigantic ship. And here are the elements that we're using. We're using a guitar amp. We're using built-in the Waves Super Tap. We're using Waves, again, this kind of small room idea, which is supposed to simulate the hallway outside Haas's berth, and then a significant roll-off of high frequencies. Let's turn these off and you can see what happens. So here's the raw file.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units, pass the word for Colonel Brian E. Neal to report.
That sounds pretty good. Sounds fine. If we add the guitar amp.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units, pass the word for Colonel Brian E. Neal to.
Sounds great. It's a 12-inch open back. Looks like a 57 that's off axis, and then this kind of setting. And you can fool around with these things all day long. It's so much fun.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units, pass the word for Colonel Brian E. Neal to report to Landing Bay 4.
I mean, just like a real amplifier. And you got all these amps you can choose. Choose a bass amp.
Hear this. Now hear this.
Different microphone. How about
Marine units,
U87?
pass the word for Colonel Brian E. Neal to report to Landing Bay 4.
I mean, it's just so useful. And then we have delays. This is the 6-tap delay we talk about extensively in Pro Member Education.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units, pass the word for.
Which is pretty cool. It just gives it that, it's a huge cavernous ship, which it probably isn't that cavernous, but I wanted to give it that feel. Then if we turn off delay and we use this IR efficient.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units, pass the word for Colonel Brian E. Neal to report to Landing Bay 4.
It's just a really cool sound that makes it sound like it's a hallway. And then, of course, the high-frequency roll-off.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units.
And then we add the delays back again.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units. Pass the word for Colonel.
And, of course, we've completely messed up this setting, so I'm just going to copy the one. There's all of this we have actually on that soft chime, because theoretically it's all coming out of the same speaker, which we like.
Hear this. Now hear this.
This isn't the same setting.
Hear this. Now hear this. Marine units.
And so together,
Hear this.
let's go back a little bit here.
Now hear this. Now hear this. Marine units.
Neil,
Colonel Brian E. Neal to report to Landing Bay 4.
but hey, it's not something that we can do again. I mean, we both know how the officer corps works. Underlings don't fraternize with their masters.
And that way you can layer it in there really nicely. It's probably a little louder than I would like, but we're trying to help out the donors after all, so they can feel like they heard their names. And the next bit here is the buzz from the video interference. And there isn't any special thing that we're doing there. They're just really cool sounds from the cinematic library. Basically for trailers and dubstep, things like that, but very electronic. And we like that. The same with this little whooshy whoosh thing from Encrypt that they have. I believe that's the same library. Yeah, it's from Cinematic. Cool library stuff. We are not a sponsor, but I use that stuff all the time. Then we have the launch of the, Starblaze, for lack of a better term. And what I have here is a sound effect of basically an elevator, sort of an elevator sound. Which I have probably a low frequency boost and a serious high frequency roll off. This is what it sounds like without dry. Beautiful sound, beautiful. And then I'm adding a pretty significant, almost 6-second reverb from Valhalla. Let's try this. So it makes it sound like it's off in the distance. It's not really in our way or anything like that. Or certainly not in the way of the dialogue. It's just more juice to have in the background. And then we have various aircraft stuff. Here's some jet engine bits. Jet engine from a Harrier. And then the F-14 taking off. And all of these, I should say none of these, have any effect on it. That's just them. Except you'll notice something interesting. Here I'm routing these not to the master output, but to bus 7 and 8. Well, what's on bus 7 and 8? There's the input of bus 7 and 8. And what's on that is a really serious situation. Low frequencies being rolled off, the wave stereo imager, so it's super wide, and then another giant 5-second reverb. So don't be fooled. You're like, oh, there's nothing on these channels. That must be how the sound effects sound. No. They're all the entire sound being routed to this aux channel where they're getting this cool treatment. You can see it here. And not too loud. We don't want to have James drown. It's just in the background. Let's see here.
It just heals it all. You know, it burns in my chest like plasma. I mean, I feel it even greater than...
So you wouldn't know that it was even there, really, if you were really in tune with him. It's just information to keep people's subconscious asleep, which is exactly what we want. And then just general ambiances. This is sort of hyperdrive sounds, if you will. And then here's just some background walla. Just stuff going on in the background that's not in his way, but people walking by, along with those footsteps that we had. Here's one of my favorites, the fluorescent light. See if we can find this. The beautiful, horrific sound. What I'm doing with that is, it's by itself, it's really, really obnoxious. Let's see here. I'm going to turn this off. That's way too in our face.
And she's not some girl who just wants to have a baby, you know?
Right, that's just not going to work. So what I've done is I've routed this. You can see here, bus 5 and 6, going to the next track over, input bus 5 and 6. And I've added another version of IR Efficient, the small room, which is a different room that we had in the hallway, just to emulate this room. And the whole sound is going to this bus and being routed there.
And she's not some girl.
So it's a lot more mellow.
Like I could trust her with myself. All of me. Yeah, there were no games. And
so it sort of acts like a nice high-frequency roll-off with an extra little boost to it. Nice little juiciness that gets out of his sibilance and still gives us a feel like he's in a sterile birth of the military. What else have we got here? Here's some more ambience. Some low-frequency stuff.
you know?
And sort of like a Zulu engine power plasma sort of sound. And the last one is sort of this wind and power together. That's your engine type noise. And then with the fluorescent light, very subtle, but there. And then the conversation. Super cool. Now here, what I've done is, because we had to do so many of these, I made a template of sounds that I knew I could use to change up each one of these rooms. Because each one of these, if you watch these on the Blade of Honor channel, they're all really in the same. They shot them in the same room, just redressed it. We had the same microphone, same everything. So we wanted the backgrounds to feel and look like different rooms entirely, different parts of the ship. Because an officer would not be, a low-ranking officer would not be in the same part of the ship as the admiral. So I put in some other ambiances just so that when I cut to a different actor or a different character, I could quickly change what it felt like. Here's some of the other ones that are not being used for Haas, but are being used in some of the other ones, which is really cool. There's this one. sort of like for somebody who's more near the engines or whatever. There's a whole bunch of other ones we have for the Admiral that I don't have here, which I added later. But you can kind of see when you need to replicate stuff very quickly, it's okay to put in sounds as you find them on tracks and just mute them or however you want to keep them out of the way, and then use them as you need to. We've got some other cool pipe sounds that I found and lowered. These are actually heating pipes that I've changed the pitch on a little bit. Which is super cool. And then I created the hyperdrive, going in and out of hyperdrive. Which is a pretty cool sound. And you're like, Mark, why is that all distorted? Why would you do that? Well, theoretically, it's so strong, it's so loud that it fries the internal microphone of the video recorder. So I kind of like that. And we use it in a few. And then my pièce de résistance is the drill sergeant and the enlisted people training outside the door of some of our characters. The story goes that most of the men have been killed, and all that's left mainly is women. And so all the Marines are basically women. So we hear this. This is actually a army drill sergeant, whatever, with his drill instructor, I guess it's called, with his mates. But then I raised the pitch, I raised the formants and left the pitch. It's pretty cool. It's really, really cool. It's a bunch of men, but I've raised them. And when you put it in here, I'll show you what I did with them to make them sound that way. Oh, you can't see. Here we go. It's I've added a really strong compressor because that drill sergeant's super dynamic. And then I've done obviously the low and high roll off, and then again that same hallway reverb sound.
Games. And Freya, I just felt her incredible Mogish's passion. I mean, oh my God.
It just sounds like they're outside the door, they're training. It might be a little loud, but anyway, some of you are probably wondering, you're like, Mark, you always talk about routing sounds so that you don't have to use so many different reverbs on all the channels. You talked about how it's CPU inefficient and all of that and how bad that is, and you're absolutely right. For something that's like this, where I knew I've got plenty of processing power, I knew I wasn't going to have that many tracks, and I also knew that each one of these reverbs was going to have a different kind of setting. I didn't worry about it. I was a little cavalier. To be honest, I was a little cavalier, and I would not suggest that you just put reverbs on every track that you need them. But do notice how many different kinds of reverbs I'm using to make this work. Probably 4, maybe 5 different settings. So I would have had to have had instantiated 4 or 5 buses anyway, and the loss in computer power really wouldn't have been that gaining rather in computer power wouldn't have been that much better. Okay, so good question. Thank you for asking. How do we integrate all of this? I mean, like I say, on the internet, we want things to be crushingly loud, and we always want to mix the dialogue first. We want to get that to a place that we like it.
I could trust her with myself.
And in this case, the dialogue actually sounds pretty good because we used a great microphone and we were in a very quiet room. No reverb. It was very easy we didn't have to do much at all. I just rolled off the lows and added the effects that were necessary. And then add the Foley, and then add the effects and ambiances and things like this, and then get fun and have creativity around it. I showed you our master output settings where I'm rolling off the low end, so it gives us more level, more energy to put somewhere else to make it super loud. And then the maximizer.
I could trust her with myself. All of me.
You can see these are reduction volume.
Games. And, Freya, I just felt her incredible Mogish's passion. I mean, oh my God. Yeah. Why would anyone want some other woman than a Mogish's?
So I could probably have crushed this more, but it was starting to mess with the backgrounds. As he would talk, the backgrounds would go up and down. You'd hear all that. The ambience going like this. It was a little rough. And as you can see, we're still crushingly loud.
I could trust her with myself. All of me. Yeah, there were no...
I mean, I have a dialogue norm of about -2.5, which is just... It may not sound loud to you, but believe me, when I was mixing, this master fader was down at -30. It's about 30 decibels louder than it normally would be, which is, I don't know, what is that, 1,000 times louder, something. So we want to use a limiter or a maximizer or something to be able to make our internet mixes as loud as possible without going over. And that's what we've done here. And as you can see, when you watch these levels are generally okay, but when we get to the final output, they're being crushingly loud. So we'll do a couple of these examples. I think it's fun to kind of check around as to what we're doing here in the land of quick and easy, independent mixing and trying to get massive immersion as much as possible. And like I said, any of this that I've shown you works in Logic, it works in Adobe Audition, it works in any of thing. There's nothing here that's Pro Tools, what would you call that? Independent. What's that word? The word when you think of like an animal is indigenous. It's not Pro Tools indigenous. So anyway, cool. Thanks for taking a look. Much more to come, and we'll see you in post.
Even if for yourself.